What's up everybody and welcome to the channel. On the 1st of March I released this video in which I detailed why I wouldn't be pre-ordering Outriders, and more specifically why I would be taking a wait and see approach with this game, as I had certain concerns with the design and a myriad of other things, and then this happened.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I ended up playing the demo for almost 15 hours, leveling 4 characters to the max level that you can get in the demo, and really enjoying the shit out of it. So if you want the too long do not watch version of this, then yes, I was wrong in my points about Outriders, my concerns with Outriders, and I've gone from not pre-ordering it to pre-ordering it and eagerly awaiting 1st of April. But the reasons for that I will unpack in this clip, but basically this is due to misconceptions I had about the game, understanding some of the mechanics and skills and design decisions better now after having done some research, but more importantly after having seen how the studio interacts with this demo and with the audience of the game, the players in general, and that has essentially changed my mind. So let's go ahead, grab a coffee, a beer, a fucking croissant, whatever it is that you need. I'm gonna do a quick intro and then we're gonna unpack it. Let's go. One of the first things that I brought up was that the game had this really bad motion blur, and that the cutscenes themselves seemed to have this really shaky cam quality, and they were all done at 30 frames per second, and all in all it was just not a really good viewing experience, and the motion blur was really disorientating, I guess is the right word for it. Not only did the developers shortly thereafter essentially tweet and confirm that no, the 30 frames per second cutscene issue is a demo only thing, and that the full game will be unlocked. They also said that motion blur would be targetable by a switch in the game when it fully launches. Then a couple of days later, they patch in the motion blur, toggle, and allow you to basically turn that off, which instantly improves the game for me just from that perspective alone. And that is actually, bringing me to an interesting topic, and that is the studio themselves. So let's discuss that a little bit. So People Can Fly Studios have not only patched this demo, and again, I stress the fact that it's the demo. They haven't patched this demo once, twice, 3 times. They've patched it more than that. They've patched it 4 to 5 times in the time that the demo has been out, addressing things like, for instance, the motion blur, but other things like... and we'll get into this when we talk about the skills and everything like that, but essentially the fact that within the demo itself you can farm weapons, you can farm equipment, which once the full game comes out you can continue on with this character, you can continue on with all of the stuff that you've unlocked. There's some things around that they've patched where people were kind of like abusing almost like a loot cave kind of system, and they were getting a lot of loot from chests which without actually playing the game, which of course kind of defeats the purpose of the game, and also rightly so causes some concern for the developer that when the game actually launches it'll impact the journey of the game and basically playing of the game, because you'd have unlocked all of these things and everything like that, which might spoil the game for you. So I get it, but also they've taken to things like Twitter and Reddit and all of that and addressed concerns that the community have, answered questions that the community have, and also reverted backwards on certain things that they've done. Like, for instance, when they did this fix that I was referring to just now, when they had seen that too many people were getting legendaries from loot boxes, for instance, they said, okay, fine, we're going to patch it so that legendaries can't get out of loot boxes. So then people came back and said, no, that's fine, it's understood, but what about a loot box that's after a boss? The boss doesn't drop any loot, and surely you should be able to run like a loot farm where you farm a boss and then you get at least a chance for loot afterwards. To which they responded, you know what, that's actually a good fucking point, so we're gonna go ahead and patch that in, and they did it within hours. So that's really my point here, is that when you see something like this, and again, this is not a live service game, but it is kind of like stepping up to compete with certain live service games like Avengers, like Destiny 2, and has certainly tried to attract the player base of those games to come and play this game. If you show that as a studio you are extremely reactive to things within the game and things that your audience, that your players are concerned with or would like addressed or would like explained or would like changed, and you're able to so fast do this. And again, I stress the fact that this was done on a demo. There's no reason for them to really do this. They could have just as well said, you know what, we'll address it in the full game, fuck it, and just gone on like a month holiday and waited for the game to launch. But they're actually patching a demo, making changes to a demo, and, you know, essentially responding to community feedback like that. So that is a huge thing for me. Again, like I said, coming from games like Avengers, which took months to fucking make any, you know, change to a myriad of the complaints which were leveled against that game. Destiny 2, which often has things within a season that are a problem that only get addressed a season later. It really is refreshing to see a studio that's able to do this and that's able to, you know, basically respond in such a quick and efficient way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Then the second complaint that I had was basically around the game design and movement was one of the things I picked on. And that was that I said that, you know, the game comes across as a cover shooter, right? Because you've got all this cover standing around, as you can see that I'm running around in this particular video that you're watching right now. But as stated by the developers, and as you'll start, you know, for me, it clicked after I came back to the demo and after I tried out the Trickster, which is the character that you see on the screen right now. Now, there are 4 different classes, and as it would be, when I tried out the demo originally, 2 of the 4 classes which I tried out ends up being like the 2 least favorite classes for me now, if I look at all 4 classes, having played all 4. So that's just bad luck on my side. And I'm glad that I went back, right? So the point is that even though the game is a cover shooter and you can stand behind pillars, you can stand behind sandbags, anything like that, it really is about movement. It really, and a lot of the game rewards you for this kind of like high risk kind of playing where you're in the face of enemies darting in and out of combat and using your abilities to sort of complement your movement. And that's very true when it comes to the different characters that you can play as well, because your choice of weapons, even though each one of character, you know, each type of character that you play can use sniper rifles, can use submachine guns, can use long range rifles, can use shotguns. The point is that their abilities are complemented by a certain, you know, way of playing. Does it mean that you can't go against the rough and say, you know what, fuck it, I am going to play a Technomancer, which is generally a long-range character. I'm going to play that in your face with a shotgun. Absolutely, you can fucking do that. But if you play to the character's strengths, then the power fantasy and the way that you can use your abilities and overall how powerful you feel as a character, I think might be more rewarding, might, you know, change your mind a little bit. And so the like I said, for me, it clicked when I tried out different characters than the ones that I originally tried. In this case, the Trickster, which now happens to be my favorite character. And also just realizing that just because there's all this cover around here doesn't mean that you have to play it essentially like a game like, you know, Gears of War, where being out of cover for long amounts of time is generally like super fucking bad. In this game, it's actually almost rewarded, especially if you look at the way that some of the characters are able to receive healing, for instance, where, you know, a Devastator actually gets auto healing from killing things up close. So yeah. So looking at back in it now, that's a refreshing way of trying to do combat, of trying to do this, and something which I, you know, really appreciate. Another thing which I had a concern with was the diversity of builds, of skills, and that it seemed like it was very simplistic what you would be able to do in terms of how you build your characters and eventually, you know, how you play the game, right? It seemed to be very much driven by this core set of skills that you have, and then just basically farming weapons and choosing, okay, I'd like to use sniper rifles and I'd like to use that. Now, what I just want to show you is that specifically if you look at this over here, you'll notice that you've got weapons that have, you know, special abilities under them once you start getting above a certain rarity. Now, these special abilities, there's a whole bunch of them in the game, and they basically, you know, range from giving you, you know, life leech, they, you know, give you shields, they cause small explosions, they freeze the enemies, they, you know, poison the enemies and all of that. And this is present on all of the weapons. And when you then go over to, for instance, a legendary, which you'll see here, legendaries actually feature 2 of these abilities. Now, the abilities also come in different rarities. So you'll notice that in the previous ones which I had, they had a little 1 above them, this has a 2 and this has a 3. This is overall indicative of the strength of the ability, or the modification. Let's start calling it that rather. Now, the game has a very robust crafting system and modification system that's not visible in this demo, but has been detailed by the developer in some of the clips that they've released consequently, and actually even a little bit before the demo was dropped. But obviously now, in the context of having played the demo, it makes a little bit more sense. So let me explain. Each one of these weapons with their mods can be disenchanted. They can be dismantled. And once you do that the first time, that mod is passed into your mod inventory. Now you'll notice, and I just want to show you here, if we go back here, you'll notice that there's a little icon here. This means that this particular mod has been disenchanted by me and is now in my mod inventory. That's obviously because I've played the demo a lot, and there's a whole bunch of weapons that I've dismantled already, because this is also one of the things that carries over from the demo to the full game. So once the full game launches, I'll have access to that crafting system, and I'll have access to all of these mods that basically I've disenchanted. So then, just moving back here, you'll notice that, as I've said, this, for instance, I only have one version of this legendary, so obviously I haven't dismantled it yet. But obviously, once I play the full game and I start leveling up, then, my character level will increase. Eventually, this weapon won't be as effective as it was before. And if I can't pay the crafting cost to increase its level to where I am, which is also something you can do, I can disenchant this and bank these two mods into my mod, library. Now, down the line, if I find that, for instance, I pick up another Thunderbird, or I pick up another legendary, and I want the Thunderbird's one of its mods to be present on that other legendary, you can swap those mods out onto it. So you can essentially combine, in your opinion, the two best effects from two separate legendaries onto another legendary of the same type. And that is fucking awesome. The thing is, that opens up an insane amount of build opportunities, and although you can't stack multiple different kinds of mods onto it, it means that your Thunderbird can essentially be different to someone else's, and really opens the playbook for, in terms of what you want to do with your weapons. Now, I've only seen legendary weapons, but I have to assume that there might be legendary gear as well. So this might then eventually end up being true for the gear as well. So that's then essentially the same thing, right? So again, you have mods on the gear which can be re-slotted onto other gears. So for instance, if you want to take your 5 gear slots that you have on your wearable gear, and you specifically gear them towards a certain ability, like twisted rounds, for instance, you could make sure that all 5 of your mods on your armor cater to that ability, and essentially then that becomes the focus ability for your build. As a side note, one other thing that's also worth noticing is, if you look down here, you'll see that this is the Pyromancer. On this ability, I have the number 3 above there. Now, that is because within the game itself, you can stack certain abilities as well, which is another thing which I wasn't expecting, because it kind of seems like the game wants you to use abilities, but the crutch of the combat should in essence be the guns, right? Because it is a cover shooter. This, however, indicates that it's entirely possible for you to potentially make a ability-based character that, yes, has weapons, but even those weapons might be used to trigger certain abilities, and the focal point of your character might in actual fact be the abilities. So what I'm talking about here is, you'll notice that this ability on my coat here says Tidal Wave, Heat Wave. The skill can be activated one more time before triggering the cooldown. So that means I have 2 Heat Waves that I can use in a row now, which is a fairly powerful ability of the Pyromancer. Then if you go down to my pants, you'll notice that here I have Ride the Waves. So again, Heat Wave, the skill can be activated one more time. Now, I have to assume, I don't know this for a fact, and I haven't found gear to suit this assumption, that it's entirely possible that I could get gloves and boots as well that have further augmentations like this, eventually letting me end up with something wacky like 5 fucking Heat Waves before I trigger cooldown, which is just insane, and again shows you that you could potentially build characters that don't necessarily have to, rely on weapons and everything as the crutch for most of their damage, and that you can essentially build pseudo spellcaster characters, basically. My point is further supplemented by the fact that when you look at the class tree, you'll notice that where previously I had thought that these micro nodes, which have these small percentage-based increases on certain abilities, are like wastes of slots and doesn't make any sense, it now starts making a little bit more sense, understanding a bit more about the mods and understanding a bit more about how they interact with your character build, that you could essentially path your way through this building, like I said, a spellcaster, or taking some of the other micro nodes and things like that, and basically focusing on reload speed or backstab damage or something like that. As what's clear from this class tree here right now, none of these macro nodes, none of these end nodes give you new abilities, but rather augment your current abilities in specific ways. Like, for instance, making that when you activate a certain ability, then you lifesteal with all the damage that you deal. Or when you activate a certain ability, all the damage you deal produces healing that is shared amongst your party. So this again shows both diversity and actually quite a complex system behind this, that in combination with this, the mods, and the different choices that you can make with those mods, and your 3 abilities that you have that you're using actively, give you a large amount of builds that you could potentially look at. And it is going to be interesting playing this and finding like what works best for farming fast, or what works best for staying alive longer, what works best for in a party versus solo. So definitely my concerns before with weak skill trees and leveling system and being a little bit bland were completely unfounded, and this actually indicates quite the opposite. So in terms of my original concerns that I had with that first video, the only thing that's left here is essentially my discussion around the story and the narrative. And again, this is a very subjective thing and impossible to really judge from a demo, but I still think that possibly this game's weak point might be the story. But I say that because if the gameplay and the variations of characters that you can build and the general farming and that sort of thing and the end game, which they've also shared details of now, is strong enough, then even if the story is weak, to be honest, it's not such a big deal, at least not in my book. Because the story you only really experience once, where the play mechanics and the upgrading your character and the power fantasy and the build variety and all of that, those are things that stay long after the story. So if that is the stronger part, then that means that the game has longevity, versus if the story is the strongest part and the systems are weak, the story will be good and you'll experience it for that 20, 25, 30 hours that you consume that, and then after that you're like, fuck it, and you're out. So I have to say that, again, as the title for the video suggests, I was absolutely wrong. I have really enjoyed this weekend that I've spent with this game, and I'm glad that I came around to after seeing some creators that I follow on YouTube that have covered this game and have spent time farming it, which I did. I farmed a fucking demo to get some legendaries and to basically experience what that does to my character build. And I can honestly say that, I mean, I'm happy with the time that I've spent with the game. I'm happy that I was wrong about the game, firstly, and that this really gives me something to look forward to on the 1st of April. It is so weird that this game launches the 1st of April. It feels like some weird April Fool's joke now. I sure hope it doesn't turn out to be that way. But I'm really excited for this, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Is it now suddenly a perfect game in my mind? No, and it's impossible to say that right now since we still only have the demo to judge. But I mean, for instance, one of the things which I'm still not super happy about is the fact that the game utilizes peer-to-peer connections for its multiplayer, and it doesn't actually have dedicated servers. I completely understand why they took that design decision and why that is the case, but for me, it's just that and this is a fucking me thing, right? Is that I play with a lot of people that are across the world from me in my friends list, and this will then most likely mean that whoever is the host will enjoy a much better latency than whoever is joining, and that's not always nice, and sometimes in this kind of game it can be quite jarring. But like I said, these kinds of, I don't even know if you can call them complaints, concerns, whatever, are really overridden for me by the things that I've seen in the time that I've spent with the demo now. And speaking about demo, it's just something that I've come to realize as well, and that is that, that studios don't do this anymore. They don't really do a full-fledged demo like this anymore, and then even more so, do the demo and then interact with the players in such a fucking way that this has happened here. How People Can Fly have done this and basically addressed things that people want to change, and they did them right in the demo so people could experience it in the demo before the full game even comes out, probably further solidifying certain people from pre-ordering the game, just seeing that kind of response. I mean, that's definitely done that for me, right? So if you haven't you haven't tried Outriders the demo, definitely fucking do it. If you're into this kind of game, if you like Destiny 2, if you like the Avengers, if you like the Avengers, God help you. But if you like that kind of experience, then I'm pretty sure that you'll like this. And if you did try the demo and it kind of put you off or something like that, I can only suggest that you give this another 2, 3, 4 hours. Try all 4 of the characters. I'm 100% sure. I'm willing to say that. I'm 100% sure you're going to find something you like here and something that you want to try out. But in any case, that's it for this video. I know it's a long one. Thanks for sticking it out if you did. If you enjoyed this, please go ahead and comment and like down below. Let me know what you think of the game. If you'll be picking it up on the first, what's the thing that you're most excited about it. And if you really enjoy content like this, please go ahead and subscribe. It helps me to bring more content like this to the channel, as well as some other things which I've got in the works. And just generally, it means a lot to me. But until next time, have a good morning, have a good afternoon, have a great evening wherever you are, and fucking take care. Cheers.